Hey everyone, it's Rita from I Don't Like Murder. I am one of your co-hosts, and here's Jenny. She's right here with me.
Hi.
Hey, this episode, it's going to be a case that I chose to talk about. Going to break it into actually probably two episodes because I want to tell you the story. And then there's so much to it. I also want to talk at a different time about the judicial process, the investigation, and things that have occurred after the crime. So it is the story of Samantha Josephson. You may have heard the story. It was national. She was the young woman, young college student who got into a lift, and the gentleman wasn't really a Lyft driver. He was looking for someone to unfortunately hurt, and she got into his car and couldn't get out and was murdered. The gentleman who was just recently convicted through trial is Nathaniel Rowland. And what's interesting about this story and terrifying is it's something that we get in cabs every day, Uber, Lyfts, ride shares, that it's just one of those unsuspecting thing that you go, no, I'm doing everything the right way. My apps, by I'm in a place that's well lit, everyone coming through is picking up, and until somebody nefariously decides this is a place where they can be a predator and choose someone to attack, and unfortunately kill. Okay, so let's talk about Samantha. Samantha was originally from New Jersey, and she's going to college at the University of South Carolina. She majored in political science. So she was also a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority and well liked by her friends and, of course, family, and just all around great gal, which many of her friends will attest to. The night Stephanie was abducted by Nathaniel Rowland, she was out with friends at the Five Points district, and they were out in different restaurants and clubs for the evening. And she was getting pretty, she was missing her boyfriend. And while she was having fun with her friends, she just really wanted to go home. And she made the decision to uh, call a Lyft and get a ride home. She was out there alone, and we'll show you some pictures of, she was standing in a well-lit area, and you can see it was a place where a lot of people were either through Uber, Lyft, cabs, a little corner on the edge of the sidewalk in front of the building where people were picking up. What was happening while she was waiting, what was later picked up on CCTV, are all the cameras posted all around our neighborhoods and main thoroughfares, is Nathaniel Rowland's car, and he were seen circling this whole Five Points district. And so no one noticed at the time, of course, but what she was, as she was waiting for an Uber, he was circling, and he was coming up to the stop sign right around that little patch on the sidewalk where she was standing. He sees that the car slows down in front. She opens the back car, says something, and then just shuts the door. And we can surmise that she probably said, "Oh, are you my Lyft driver?" And they said no. And she waited, and then he immediately drove up. She opened the door and got in. And unfortunately, what we find out later, he had child safety locks in the car. So once they got in the car, he deployed those, and she wasn't able to open that back door once she figured she wasn't going home. So that's the story of how she got from having fun with her friends and family to doing the normal thing of calling and the responsible thing of, if you've been out partying with your friends, you'll call a Lyft driver, someone to drive you home. And then how she mistakenly got into a car that she thought was Lyft, and the person agreed to it. So the things that I find, then this is just the first part of the story. Unfortunately, she was found at a later time. Of course, everyone, she was missing. She didn't come home. And then a body was recovered a few days later, and it was recovered about a mile away from Nathaniel Rowland's parents' farm. And so we're going to go over some of the details on the next episode of what the police had to go through to look for. And then more in detail, two things, not only of Stephanie, but of Nathaniel, because what I find amazing and shocking is when we look at Nathaniel's life, his family's life, there really would be no precursor to this type of violence. And to this day, his family still says there's just no way, even with the evidence, video evidence of him, his car, and a few other suspect things that he had done, that someone like that he's just like a good kid, like Stephanie would be called a good kid. So I'm really interested in kind of delving into that, the kind of the psychological part of someone who is living a life of just like everybody, just a regular life, good life, family loves you, you're doing a good thing. And then the next thing you know, you're on CCTV kind of circling, looking to pick up someone, and that person ends up brutally murdered. So we want to look at that, and then how the detectives were able to break the case and then take it to trial, because it happened, the abduction and murder happened 2 years ago, and the trial was just decided this past August, where he was found guilty, and we're in October 2021, so it's only been for a couple months. So the key thing is, there's a lot of key things actually, but the one really interesting thing is Stephanie's parents, what they've done after the case, which is, you may not know, I didn't know until I read about the case, is that they took their grief and what had happened to their daughter and said, there has to be a safer way for us to be able to travel. And even though as women, and I'm sure Jenny, you learned this too, especially when we're younger, don't travel alone, travel with a buddy, especially when you're in an area that you're not familiar with. Now, what's frightening, of course, is this was a well-lit area, college town, all your friends, and terrifying to me is that you would never think not to get into an Uber or Lyft. Why wouldn't you think it was safe until now? Now, of course, and that's how I'm looking at it, is this case propelled a much more stricter and rules, and the parents led the charge with Congress to say, we have to make sure that there's some mark, some way to identify when you're out out and about and you're alone, because we shouldn't have to always, I was just telling Jenny before we started taping that how many times we've been at an airport, and they have that cool little thing that says, oh, your car will be here, and you can see 3 or 4 different Ubers coming to the airport, and you're thinking, okay, well, they have a GPS, I've got a GPS on my phone, but I would never think in a million years that there could be a 4th car that you could easily mistake. So that's my case. I'm kind of leading it with some generality, so with just a little bit of the story, because the trial, what the family's done, and kind of and just looking at Stephanie's life, honoring her life, of course, her young life, but then looking at Nathaniel, and just looking at it from the impact on his family, that it would be, I have a daughter, a young adult daughter, who I think is the best thing since sliced bread. She's lived a very good life. It's almost like that. Like when you see the parents, you can see that they honestly are saying there is just no way my kid could have done that. And so, and that's true to them. And so it's that, so I'm always interested in how does that happen? And so because he pronounced his innocence, his family stood by him. So there was no remorse to be had when you're saying, he believes to this day, he did not do it, even with the evidence and a jury convicting him. And then the family is going to stand behind it. and I just look at the emotional pull and just of saying, I'm sure those parents, just like I could say, I know my daughter would never murder someone or didn't murder someone. They're saying it with the same conviction. So just this psychological pull, not only for the loss of the parents, because it's unimaginable, then what they did with their grief, but then the parents of the convicted who can't get there, who can see what we see in terms of, and I'll get fancy with some editing to show some of it's his car. The police finally found the car, and then they have the police cam of when they got him to say, we just want to talk to you. He ran, which was very suspicious.
Oh, yeah.
And that car had incriminating evidence in it. So there's that. So it's a twist on the story of the crime. And then the next episode, just going a little bit more into the advocacy for her murder. And then really, I get emotional thinking about it, is that her situation is going to make more people safe. And it's an awful, and so it's that her parents' grief turned it into something that for us, that we don't have to worry about it, because now we know there's identifiers. Right. And so, and if it, so it's emotional, and it's kind of that, probably because we don't, as a society, we don't think we could get murdered any second. We can't walk around thinking that. But but now we know, well, you can. Nobody, because if there's somebody who has a bad, who just like in other cases we talk about, you just never expect it to happen, and then what happens after that. So that's the first part, which is honoring Stephanie, looking deeper into Nathaniel and his family, and then really, if there's any way we can uncover, were there any signs when there weren't, which is amazing. And then the advocacy from the parents, and then going over the case, a little bit of the trial, and then a little bit of the evidence. That's the really in the trial. And then in the end of the trial, when they were doing the victim impact statements, and then to be heard on behalf of the convicted or Nathaniel, his mother got up and she said, the impact is my son didn't do it. And the judge actually had to shush her and said, he has been convicted by a jury of his peers. And you can see, because the judge believed it, because what he saw of the case, but it's intriguing, and it's just one of those things that I just want to explore a little bit more, especially from Nathaniel. No sympathy. I think that he's guilty because I saw the evidence too. Can't get him out of that car. And yet what was compelling and intriguing was that mother knows her son didn't do it, even seeing the evidence and sitting there. So the case is a little bit more in depth than just a 20-minute story, but this is the first stage, and then we'll cut it off here, and then I will poor Jenny's got to hear it again, but no, but all of us get to hear it again. But then the next episode will be just more in depth on those 4 points: the advocacy, the trial, the family, and the impact of both families, and then what makes people tick, pretty much just like in all our shows. Just what makes people, like, how do you start from you're the best person in the world? Because that's always the conundrum for me when we look at these cases, is you hear these stories of, I had no idea, they were just a quiet person, they kept to themselves, because we can't see the boogeyman when
it's the quiet ones,
right? So that's why I talk so much. No, but really interesting cases. Again, to the audience, we're thrilled that you're here with us. Thank you on our new show. This is only going to be our 3rd or 4th episode, but we're super excited. We hope you join along. Please add any cases that you think that would be interesting, based on, we're not just looking at the crime itself, but a lot of the aspects around the crime. And we're really looking forward to all the other cases that we have. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of I Don't Like Murder. I'm signing off for me and Jenny. We will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.